Let's do the thing.
Hello, everyone. We're here. We're doing the thing. It's happening now. We're back
Oh
with
my
the
God,
social
the
pillar.
thing,
Thea, it's
the
just
thing,
us.
the
How are you?
thing. Oh my God, it feels so empty in here. I've got all this space. Oh, wait, no, I'm reaching past the
Space.
frame. I've got all this space. It is just us. Oh, I don't know if we're going to be able to manage without Ian. He is our heart, soul,
I
and
think we'll be
more
fine.
importantly, organizer.
He's our rock.
He's our
But we're here.
rock.
We're live. We're
But we
running and
are
rolling.
here. Hello, everybody. It is always but her words. You know how before we started, you said, "Hey, Thea, do you want to do the start?" And I went, "Sure, I've got that."
Yeah,
Doing it good. I'm doing the
you
words and I'm
got it.
putting them together in a pile,
You
and
take your
it's
time.
incredible. But yes, we are doing the social pillar where we talk. It is the ongoing conversation about the value of role-playing games and their crafts, cultures, and communities. Before we start, as always, would like to acknowledge that we are coming to you from Aboriginal land. I am still on Dara country. And we'd like to pay our respects to elders past and present, and also extend those respects to any First Nations people, whether Australian or from other locations, that might be watching or joining us on the podcast, which will come, but we'll talk about that another time. Yes, I like that surprise look. This is one of those things that I've got plans. I have plans.
We do have plans.
But yes, I am OMGM. Hi. I'm the one that talks over everybody, asks a question, then doesn't give them a chance to finish. But I am joined by the wonderful, beautiful, incredibly warm soul on, wait, I've got to figure out which side to point. That side.
Your left.
That one? Yeah.
Hi. That's me. Hey. Hi. I can. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Jared, also known as the GM Chef, and I'm so keen to have Thea all to myself this evening. Ian is still jet setting across the beautiful nation of Japan. As you guys would have seen last week when you tuned in, we talked about Japanese role-playing games and their culture, which is distinctively unique and wonderful. But tonight we're just trying to make do without Ian, and we are going to talk about some note taking, because I feel it's such a core thing about role-playing games. Some of us do it, some of us don't, and I think we all end up finding different approaches in the end. So we're going to talk about our journey with note taking through the years of role-playing.
Role-playing. And I think an interesting thing is that it's you and I doing this without Ian, who in our little triumvirate, he is our note taker.
Yeah.
So
there's a certain,
there is definitely I don't know, it's not hypocrisy, that's not the word I'm looking for. Apocryphal? Let's go with that.
Imposter syndrome?
Yeah, imposteral. That's a word now. But yes, imposteral. Sit up straight, show us your good impostering. Wait, what? Oh, the chaos is here. I am 100% for it. Jared, you and I actually take notes in a fairly wildly, vastly different approach. So why don't we talk about some of the different ways that we take notes?
Absolutely.
Does that work for you?
In preparation. Okay? Absolutely.
You could say no, which I always... It's like when you've got your players at the table and you say, okay, so there's this option. Is that okay with you? And they never say no, but what if they do? And we're off on a side quest. Yeah.
Exactly. Absolutely. We did sort of uncover that we have different approaches, different methods, and we've had to make do in certain things. We've obviously tried different methods. You being a much more digital DM has allowed you to have to figure out a way that works for you, and yeah, you can talk about that. I've dabbled with digital forms, with more tactile sort of handwritten methods, and I've fallen back into that more recently because I found that just having a dedicated pad, a grid pad with a pen right there, is the quickest way for me to jot something down, and then I can review that afterwards. But we're going to be talking about in-game, out-of-game between games, getting reflection from players, because it's not all up to the dungeon master to figure all of this out. And I think we had a little bit of overlap. The Venn diagram was, there was a slither in between where we both thought that the checking in with players, whatever that method may be, was actually really effective as well, for various things. So in your experience.
So, I mean, that. I cut you off before you make the vastly important point. But I think it's interesting. So you kind of bring up a really good point, is there's kind of two main schools of methods of taking notes. There's the digital in its various forms, and there's the manual. Let's call it physical manual.
Traditional.
Manual.
Traditional?
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's go traditional. Sure.
Okay.
But you know what's interesting is, as you were saying there, that I'm the more digital DM, which I am. I run far more games, but I almost exclusively take physical notes during game. And I think that's, and I'm just trying to reflect on why I do that. I mean, physical note taking, that's what we've been doing throughout history. It's when we had theatre of the mind, it's what people do. But I think for me, physical notes tie in a little bit to what I'm used to. So in my previous work, various jobs, I have been in the position where I'm taking notes while I am both talking and listening to people. So I think that is a habit that I've developed. So for me, taking notes, not looking at those notes while I'm writing them, is actually quite natural. So I've fallen back on that almost unconsciously when I am running a game. And the more I think about it now, the more the notes that I take reflect the way that I do case notes. It's quite brief, and it tends to be prompts and cues that I will then go back later and fill around more detail. Whether I do actually go back and fill in that detail, I'll talk about that a little later. But I think it can be interesting if you don't have that experience or that practice of taking notes while talking. I think the physical note taking can be a little bit of a challenge. And you were saying, Jared, you've kind of done both. You've done the electronic, which is kind of the other school of thought, as well as the physical.
Absolutely. I've started off physically in person, dungeon mastering, running games in person. So when I really dove into the role-playing games, really dove into it with 5th edition, I found that the easiest thing was to have a big A4 gridded piece of paper, and that way I could sort of structure things. I could kind of compartmentalize things. Some of my session prep would go down like little shorthand stat blocks that just have a little health bar in the grid with my little cheat method for tracking health. And then just basic stuff like AC and stuff. So I'd put a little corner for that sort of a thing. I distinctly remember the first time at Comic-Con, that's how I kind of planned my whole session, was just on one A4 page. And then you can tick stuff off. You can add things. You can say, okay, well, maybe there's a particular loot that was on particular body and stuff like that. And when you're just jotting things down like that, I feel like it is more of a flow method. You can do it while talking. You can do it while listening. And if you are going to go that route, it shouldn't take too much of your time. So if it does work for you, wonderful. And then I've found when I'm doing digital, when I'm running online, it's a completely different approach. Even though my modern prep these days is purely through Notion, I have all of my stuff there, D&D Beyond, and I have a tablet that I take to run my sessions on. I want that for reference. I don't really want to sit there, start typing things out, especially on a cramped tablet keyboard, when I can't really touch type on that. Whereas full-size keyboard with sort of prep notes, and if I was doing, again, like you said, the expanding on the notes or taking down a significant amount of information after a session, I find that that's probably the best way to do it. So again, whatever stage of the session you're on, you might try a different thing and see what works for you. And I've found myself coming back to traditional when I'm playing in person, and I may even...
So if you're wondering why I'm not responding, I have completely lost audio.
Oh no, my audio. That's dreadful. Something's happened.
So I'm going to do a thing.
Okay.
Which is great.
Great. Thea apparently can't hear me, ladies and gentlemen. I think you guys can hear.
Okay, I've got it back on a very ad hoc way.
Okay, you're not watching the stream and then listening to yourself and hearing me in a 10
But I believe everybody here on channel could hear us. I am listening to the stream.
Let us know. Okay. Do you want to try the video feed that I've sent you before? You can just open it up in a new window, maybe. I'll just let that go through the Twitch mechanisms.
Yeah, I might try that. So sorry, everybody here. And hi, Totalbod. Great to have you.
Hey. Totalbod, you devil, you.
All right.
Hope you're.
Let's see. No, I have absolutely nothing of you through our video thing, but that is okay. Look, you know what? It's going to be a very strange way of listening to myself and listening to you. So there's going to be about a half-second delay between what you say, Jared, and me responding to it.
Okay, I'm going to join the Discord and mute you if you want to join. And that way you can hear me through Discord, maybe? Can you try that?
Let's do that.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, and I'm also going to say you're very faint on the stream, Jared. You're much fainter than me.
Okay, well, let's just tweak a few little things. Let's see what ends up going through in the Discord.
This is quite a peach chat behind.
Okay, hello.
Hi. Okay, I've now got you on that.
Okay, you can hear me. I can't hear you.
I can.
Problem solved? Question mark.
Problem solved. Thank you, everybody, for your patience while we worked through that. That was.
We're back.
Yeah, we're back.
We're back.
We're back in our own Frankenstein way. But it's fine. Everything's fine.
We did it.
So Jared, you were talking about your various note-taking. I'm going to assume you talked a little bit about the incredibly creative and systematic way that you approach, that you take to so many things. I've seen your game Notion. I've heard you talk about your the way you use grid paper to take notes. Before I lost you, I was actually looking for an example of my notes because it is quite a difference. So the kind of things that I take notes and the way it looks is, not
pulls out
as
a used envelope that's just scrawled on the back of.
Literally. Yep. So that's some stats. That's some notes. See, D&D up the top. Yeah.
Just in case you find it down the back of the computer later behind the desk, oh yeah, that was important.
Yeah, I had to remember that for my players. But yeah, that is how my note-taking looks. It is far less systematic. Yeah, it's more freeform, So, and these are the note papers that I use. Yeah, which I think fits in potentially as a reflection of the way my mind works, which is entirely possible. But it works for me.
Yeah, I definitely thrive under structure. Yeah, I thrive under structure. I like to have a place for things to go. As we've said in prepisodes, my whole approach is mise en place, the whole kitchen dynamic of in its place. Because I just want to focus on the session and the running and the execution. And then I do have in my session prep sheets a tiny little corner in the first thing in my session prep sheets is the recap from my session notes that I hopefully took. And then my last thing on my session prep sheet is prompting questions of any new NPCs, any cool magic items you came up with. Did you throw a side quest in? Did anyone die? Any NPCs, any player characters, anything significant that's worth kind of mentioning? Was there a dynamic change? Did they go on a side quest? Did they not choose any of the things that you'd put down? So that's my default way to go about. But when we were running our when we were playing in our massive one shot, I even had a short form sort of a thing instead of my level 20 D&D Beyond character sheet. I wrote down a bunch of shorthand and notes, and then I had a little corner for something I don't really do as a player too often, but when I am playing, I like to be the note taker. So I have a whole little corner of the names of the Gith who were telling the Gith Yankee and the Gith Sarai, what their intentions were, who we were going to, what we were going to try and do.
Yeah, what we wanted to do.
So I feel like I would be a good note taking player. You have a lot more time as a player to do that. So Yeah.
You do, don't you? And I found that in our game. It's interesting that you actually say that. So when I play, I make occasional notes. And again, as I reflect, I think I make about the same amount of notes as a player as I do as a DM. Now, I'm not saying that is a good thing or recommending that is the way to go, but it works for me. And I think when we were talking about, preparing for this discussion, we really wanted to emphasize that there's no right or wrong. It's about finding what works for you. And I am trying to come up with a nice way of saying it. I think I'm a just-in-time planning, preparing kind of person. And again, that kind of does reflect things that I've done throughout my life, work, etc. But I tend to take small notes and prompts, and they're not systematic when I'm doing them. And I think I always have intentions of going back and reorganizing it and making good notes. But what I find myself doing is going back to those scraps of paper, and those little cues so far are enough to remind me of where it sits in the story. Because I've always said, for me, in the way my brain works, I remember stories, but specifics like names, place names, that sort of thing, I don't remember. And I think that's just the way that my brain is built. Right. So for me, that way 100%. Of sort of those physical notes takes it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sorry,
would you say that the act of taking those notes, specifically like a traditional method, because I'd say that there is an argument for handwriting versus typing up notes, you're going to find a way that suits you better. Would you say that the act of actually physically taking handwritten notes means that it's more likely to actually sink in? And then when you do have to go and reference it, it's not just Jiminy as a name. You're like, oh, Jiminy. I know who that is. Yep. I actually have suddenly the whole character comes forth. Is that what you feel? Like you don't need to say who Jiminy is, what his accent is, what exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I need that key to go in the lock that will then unlock the story. And I think that's what I find.
100%, just a prompt.
Just a prompt. And thinking back, that's how I've learned when I studied being at uni and that sort of thing as well, is I wrote a whole lot of notes that I never looked at. But the physical act of writing them was enough to be able to go, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing now. And this is the information, the story that I need to retain. But I realize that not everybody's like that, as much as I would like the world to be like me. Actually, no, I wouldn't. That would be terrifying.
No, it'd be wonderful.
But it is interesting.
I also learned when I was studying, like doing academic stuff, that that like writing on yellow paper is apparently also more memory retentive. So I would say that through the academic method of note taking, during lectures and all of that sort of stuff. Obviously, that's far more. Again, we're just making up words tonight. Absorbative, like you are just sitting there trying to absorb.
We're talking about note taking.
You do have
we can make up words.
We're just making up shenanigans, and hopefully you do actually have a lecturer who is perhaps a bit more engaging and sort of and isn't just vomiting information out to a bunch of uni students or whatever. But yeah, I would say that there's a lot to be learned from that sort of method of note taking. And if that's what you're well versed in and practiced in, that's what's going to work for you. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's talk about a fairly new phenomenon. Sorry. This is going off the rails already. But that streaming, I know, Ian, we miss you. But streaming. Because it's not just about words on a page anymore, typing things, writing things physically. Yeah. Streaming and recording games, I think, has opened up a whole new world of being able to go back and, so long as it's perhaps not a 7-hour game that you need to review, but being able to go back and review what happened to that game exactly. It's almost as if, hey, there was an NPC that I wanted to remember that was at the start. You can actually go back, and if you've streamed or if you've recorded your game, you can do that. There's a GM, Johnny Chiodini, who is an English streamer, game master, excellent all-round human being. And when they're running games, they've often said that like a con game or a stream game, they'll go back and watch it because they don't remember when they're on stage and performing what's happened in a game, but that allows them to get that exact knowledge so they can then have that continuity. Because why do we take notes? It's for continuity, right? It's to pick up on the things that are important to the players that happen so much as a DM. Actually, you know what? It's more important for players now that comes out of my mouth. Because as a DM, I've got my plan. I know how I want this session to go. And what I often do for me and any of my players who are maybe listening to this or around, I have the game posted in my Discord saying, hey, this is what this game's going to be. This is the level. This is kind of what's happening. And if the game does not go too far off the rails, that is enough for me to remember and be able to pick up. But if something happens and it plays to things that are not my strengths, so names, amounts, my players must hate me because I forget consistently about what loot I've given them. I've now picked up a
hey, if they don't write it down, they didn't get it. That's my rule. If players have one thing to keep track of, it's their possessions. Like, come on.
Yep. 100%. Although I have had a couple chasing me up saying, hey, you gave me this jewel. Because at the time in the game, I'm like, oh, yeah, this is going to tie into this point later on down the track. So I'm going to give them this soul jewel and it's going to be this color. If I don't write those details down, I need the players to remember and go, hey, tell me about that black jewel with the weird oily sheen that you gave me and that seemed to sing in my brain. If they can give me that, I can reconnect to the story. Or I can go back and I can watch the stream. But it's interesting. So there's a whole new way because we have much greater access to AV, to recording, that you can get that. But that's a lot of detail. And for example, our level 20 game, there's stuff that probably happened in that, some interactions. I don't remember exactly where they happened. So I'm wondering whether a key thing to do if people are going to use video is to maybe make notes of just times have happened in the game.
Timestamp it for sure. Absolutely. Clip it, do whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
I have definitely obviously I'm streaming this whole game. I've done so on the GM Shift channel and stuff. So I've had all of that set up in the past, and because I've got streaming and recording software set up for just games that I've run online digitally, not broadcasting or recording for anyone's entertainment or any purposes, I have just recorded an entire session and gone through and reviewed it because it is such an efficient way. You play it back in 2x speed and, or you can just kind of scrub through it and go, okay, what are we talking about? Oh, they're still at the tavern. Okay, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, now they're actually fighting the yoga. Da-da-da-da. Oh, okay, they've found the MacGuffin. Sweet. Okay, who has the MacGuffin? What was their feelings about it? Where do I want to run from this? That would be my approach to it. So it's not necessarily about sitting down and spending the exact same session time hoping that some nuggets of gold come out. You run through it, and like you said, you might have had like an intention for something or a character, etc. I know that I've been doing the same recently. I gave them a magic item that they didn't know was magic. It was just a cool thing that they picked up in a toy shop, and I was going to make it cursed and haunted and whatever. And I said, okay, you note that down on your, make sure you note that down on the character sheet. And then I didn't note it down. I had an intention for it, but because we played so infrequently, they said, oh, okay, we've got some downtime. I want to start pulling the Russian dolls apart. And I went, yes, that totally cursed thing that I said I would let you know about. So, I
have done...
It became a role-play moment in the end, which is nice. Fine. But,
I've done the same thing, is that I've given people items and I have forgotten. I haven't forgotten, but I've said, hey, cool, I will let you know more about that because I have a downtime section in my Discord. And Discord, I think, or whatever software site you want to use for players to chat offline, is super useful. And I've said, hit me up in the Discord in my downtime play and I'll tell you all about it. And then I don't contact them. Although I wonder sometimes we can, put responsibility on players as well if they do want to follow up. I've just got to then reply because I know there's a couple of players that have sent me messages and I'm like, yeah, cool, I'll tell you about that, just not tonight because I'm out of spoons or out of cursed Russian dolls if we want to really stretch that analogy. And I haven't got back to them. So that's actually another way of note-taking is using things like Discord. I mean, we're not sponsored. but
Yeah, no,
Discord sponsor us.
whatever your chat method is, most of my groups are organized through Facebook Messenger. My clients generally, because they're international, we just use Discord. We
Yeah.
host the games there,
Yeah.
etc. It is just a central one-stop shop, and it's fantastic. It keeps a log of things. You can chuck videos and memes and clips and everything you want in there. It's wonderful.
Yeah, picking up on that, how do you find Facebook Messenger versus Discord?
I mean, it's fine. Like, obviously, when I only really use Facebook Messenger for IRL, like in-person games.
Just chatting.
My only current in-person games is Spelljammer. However, my Spelljammer group and other groups that I have run with similar players, not the exact composition, they have a player-only Facebook chat. So they get to discuss and plan and strategize against what I may be throwing at them, and I don't get privy to that. I find it kind of odd. I embrace it, and I also really feel FOMO, and I'm like, but if I did know, what could I achieve, you know? And then it would be, I feel like I need it to be a sacred space for them where they don't have, you know, they don't have the overlord, the weaver of fate and destiny getting in the way of what are effectively internal thoughts, you know? And let's say internal planning. You know, it's kind of like prayer. Like if your prayers are private and sacred, and you're speaking to whatever Lord or deity or power outside of yourself that you feel you need to have that with, it's a private thing for the most part. And I think it's kind of like that in a way, where it's just like they want to be able to just shoot the shit and go, oh my God, what is he doing? How are we going to do this? But the other problem is like when they do that and they make their own plans and strategies and effectively their own notes, I'm not necessarily going to do what they anticipated. And when we had a big session, big combat, 3 out of 4 player characters knocked out at the end of the session, they had all these intentions and strategies of how they were going to quickly get each other up, how they were going to heal and do things. And luckily, what I decided to do with these elemental creatures was fuse them together, and they went perfect, a single target for our strategy now. But I could have
elemental Voltron.
I could have done all sorts of weird things. So, you know, I definitely feel like, sure, they feel satisfied because they've done something and it's working. But also they could completely miss the mark. So
yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I've seen on a few of the discussion forums about DMs, and I think there's a split. Some people are quite comfortable with players having private chats, and some DMs are actually very uncomfortable with that. And I can kind of see both sides. Sure. I think for me, I have no issues if the players want to talk to each other and plan and scheme and just chat, because I actually love it. I love it when my players are talking to each other. But I can also see, and I think it was interesting you use the word FOMO, is it's like, these are my friends, because that's, you know, it's not a DM versus the players game. There's no winning in D&D or any TTR. Well, most TTRPGs, there's no winning. But what there is a group of friends collaboratively telling a story. And so if you aren't included in part of that, I can definitely see how some GMs might feel that they're being excluded because their players are chatting. And also I think that might drive some DMs to set up Discords Discord is the only kind of program I know that does what it does. I'm sure there's others.
I mean, we're not using Skype these days, let's be honest.
Yeah, and Skype didn't have the functionality, but the fact you can set up channels, and I know some people have set up in their service channels for the players just to talk, but they still have that option that they can go there and they can still see what's going on. And I think using your players in a very kind and benevolent way, but using your players to keep track of some of the goings on can also be a really effective way of note taking, or I want a different word than note taking. It's like record keeping, or I don't know, tracking, history taking. I don't know, but tracking what happens in the game. It's a bit of both,
but like you said, it is kind of. I don't know, like it absolutely is that. It's both past and present and future, because one during session note becomes a post session note, becomes a recap, becomes a scene that you plan. becomes a whole combat encounter. Like, it is absolutely everything. And that's actually a really philosophical kind of weird way to think about the fluidity of the nature of TTRPG storytelling. But
well, actually, the fluidity of history, if we really want to get deep.
Let's be honest. And history is cyclical, as we all know. So
and it's only what happened in the past is really reliant on who wrote it down. However, before we solve all the philosophical ins and outs of the world, but I want to pick up on that point as well, because I know that there are times where things have happened in game that I, as a DM, have felt that it's going to be really important for a player. For example, and I know I use this example a lot, but when I had a group of players over a year ago now go into a hat store and, you know, try and flirt with the tabaxi behind the counter, that turned into an ongoing story arc. I didn't write that tabaxi's name down in that first session, but I did remember they'd met a tabaxi and had a really good interaction. So fortunately, my players also did not write that tabaxi's name down.
Perfect.
So it was fine. It came
Milo
together
became
well.
Alexander, and nobody knew the difference.
It was not a clue. It was absolutely not a problem.
Perfect. I've done the same thing in Spelljammer with Mango Quest, because they needed a ship. They had to kind of cash in a favor. Their spelljamming ship was already equipped for a delivery, and the deal was, you can have it as long as you make the delivery and bring me the payment had already been organized. You just need to ensure the shipment gets there, go to such and such a market and meet so and so. There'll be a stall, and you just need to use the code word mango. I distinctly remember writing that down. It was just a throwaway thing that I'd put on a pad, and I was like, whatever. And that became Mango Quest, this whole beautiful side quest, and something actually came from it, and it was kind of just a throwaway comment, or, you know, I literally said, you know, code word mango, or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Code word mango,
really
safe word mango.
Into something it turned into something quite special and spectacular. So, hey, it is both past, future, and present, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that kind of ties into something else that we wanted to talk about, and why taking notes, taking records, making history in some way is important, is picking up on those things that are important to your players that may not necessarily be important to you. And this is something that we've talked about in previous prep episodes and running a game back in season 1, I think, is methods and techniques to keep track of what is important to your players. And you've got a really good one that you introduced me to, in fact.
Yeah, for sure. I have to give credit to the dreaded GM, Josh, fellow Aussie TTRPG streamer and wonderful human. I was tuning into one of his live play sessions, and unfortunately only caught the end of it. But what I did manage to catch was him prompting everyone to give props to each other, give kudos, give acknowledgements, and sort of MVP stars in a way. And I thought that was really cool. And he basically said everyone needs to give themselves credit for something cool that they thought they did, and give someone else credit and kind of shout out someone else for something cool they did. And that can be a GM, can be a player, and it can be absolutely any reason, whether it was a cool idea, a cool role play moment, a cool combat thing, whatever it may be. And it can be shared, because I remember the tall barbarian got enlarged by the wizard, and that meant that when he fought a bullet, it was an even match, and it was this spectacular thing. And that takes two to tango. It was wonderful. So
amazing.
Now I've researched the idea of giving props, and the idea of stars and wishes has come around, and that's my preferred method. So stars is these stars are the kudos, giving props, and you can give someone a little gold sticker effectively. I need to get some gold stickers. I'm doing this. This is gonna be amazing. Oh no, but then it's gonna get competitive. No, anyway, never mind. But you effectively give people those props, and you acknowledge a cool thing that someone does. And then wishes are things that you also not only thought was cool just in general, but things you want to see more of, things you want to engage with. Like, you thought, man, that combat was really cool. And I've had people say, we haven't done combat in a while. This is really good. And I also like to kind of always check in with my players and be like, how's the combat? Is it too rough, too tough, too light, too easy, not enough strategy, too many single kind of combatants? I do like to constantly sort of check in and
check in with them. That's really interesting, because
interrogate keeps coming up. It's wrong.
I like to interrogate my players. I've not had you as a GM, but I am now aware. But I think it's an interesting question, is that you run games that are ongoing. You run campaigns, whereas I tend to run interconnected one-shots. And just you talking about that makes me think I would like to come up with a way of doing that with my in and out players. I come again, go again, all of that. Dealer's choice. Totalbot has given us inspiration as well. I think we could both be inspired. Oh, you know what we could do? We should do the wavy arm getting ready dance. I think that is inspiration. This is an inspiration dance.
Everybody.
Which is also, amazing. But that is a good idea, Isaac. Thank you, Totalbot. You reminded me I need to update those rewards. But it's a pleasure to have you, and also a pleasure to have the wonderful Doria. Totally worth it. Thank you. I am glad. We're going to have to come up with a better oh, my God. We've just come with an idea for another point redeem. It's GM dance. Oh, I'm going to do it. I'm doing it. I love it. Now watch me take notes.
Into a fitness stream.
No, going to be that. I mean, we'd have to change the category of the stream. I'm going to make a note of that on my scrap paper that I'm going to do that. See, this is the kind of note taking that I do.
Exactly.
Think updated redeems. Perfect. Amazing. GM dance. That is true. GM dance, Doria.
Beautiful.
But yeah, so we're talking about stars and wishes, and that's something that I've tried to do more with my players because, and I may have spoken about this before, but anyone who's new to the stream is over on OMGM, I run a whole series of interconnected one-shots. So people can come in, they can leave. You don't have to commit to a whole campaign, which is great for those that are definitely hinting towards the ADHD or commitment phobe area of being a human.
Super.
But it does mean, though, for me that I can't just go back to the previous game. I need to come up with a better way. And I'll admit, I don't do this well. I could do much better by my players by being much more systematic about, hey, at the end of the game, what did you like? What would you like to see going on with your character, and recording that. And it could be quite simple. I could just note it down, and I think I'm going to try to do that. One of the things that I've tried to do recently is get my players to do a recap. And this is another way of kind of catching up on what happened in the previous game, and maybe as a prompt. And I keep coming back to prompts, and I think that's what note-taking, however method it is about. It's prompts for you as a GM to then go forward and make the game much more tailored to what your players want, what they're getting out of it. Yeah, building blocks, 100%.
Yeah, a catalyst, a seed sometimes for an entire, for sure.
Yeah, like a side quest or anything.
Yeah.
And I think
it's both continuity and
what I've tried to do is get my players to come up with a recap. And one of our regular community members here, Hatter, does this really well. So he doesn't run the game, but I'm sure he won't mind me calling him out because he is an awesome human being, a fantastic player, and has a great channel as well. Yeah, definitely. But I don't think he's here, so we can't shout him out, but he's great. Go follow him. It's Hatter HRG. Anyway, what his DM does on one of his games is actually get the players to do a recap at the end. And talking about capturing what is important to the players, getting a player to do a recap, they are going to pick up and report back on what was important to them. And I think that is
so valuable.
Yeah, a really nice way of doing it. And so 100%. I think that's the limitation, I suppose, though, is that you can really only do that when you have regular players that are coming back. For me, I have people, I do have sort of a core group that tend to play most games. But it would also be a little bit funny and maybe a tad Machiavellian and mean to ask a player who wasn't at the last game. So tell me about the previous game. It's your turn to do the recap.
Oh, no, but
that would be
an
mean.
Improv idea, though.
Oh, my gosh, that would be... Oh, that would be so much fun. Can we do that somehow?
You get me on your show, and I will be the improv catalyst and be like, well, I really enjoyed that hat shop.
Yeah, the hat shop was amazing, and the mother-in-law of the wedding that we crashed, who ended up being a demi-lich, was incredible. I think that could be a lot of fun. Oh, you have to come on OMGM. That would be so much fun.
Never been.
I actually have a game coming up. Oh, that would be so good. I actually have a game now, talking about note-taking, and now we're going to talk about me because, well, why not? I'm here. I'm part of this conversation, but I haven't streamed a lot of games a lot lately. Life, been busy, but getting back into it. What I unfortunately have done is left two distinct groups of characters on cliffhangers because I had absolutely every intention of going back and picking up that game the next week, and it didn't happen. So I have one group of adventurers currently in a dungeon where they just wiped out a whole bunch of undead, but they're now hearing voices and whispering. That was the end of that game. And I have another group that I left on a cliffhanger that I don't remember. I know I left them on a cliffhanger.
Right.
I don't remember where because I didn't take notes. So I'm kind of happening. My plan for this coming game is like, hey, there's been strange happenings around town. Report if you know anyone that something odd has happened to. It's going to be chaos, but also the benefit of having players who perhaps don't take notes themselves. I don't think I have any note-taking players, well, not really detailed notes, is that if I say it with confidence, I'm hoping that we can all come together in a collaborative way and agree that's what happened.
Yeah, why not? Because that's the core of the role-playing experience, is that it is collaborative.
Absolutely.
We do want to make something together. It's not just up to the game master to provide the entire plot and story and everything, but also getting that player feedback of like, hey, what did you find enjoyable? What did you find cool? That's built into the stars and wishes. I've seen players use the inspiration mechanic that came with fifth edition. Dungeon Master asked the players, if you don't have inspiration at the end of a session and you would like to have inspiration, write a diary entry or a journal entry from the perspective of your player character. And it can just be a paragraph. It can be like, man, geez, that combat today was really tough. Someone nearly died. I was really sad. That's sorry, Bod. I was thinking of the Turtle Barbarian. That's Turtlebot in chat. But no, actually, speaking of Turtlebot, who is a player in one of my campaigns, he has taken to using ChatGPT to embellish and expand on his notes. So he's finding enjoyment in that and taking general notes and little things and bits like that, and then letting ChatGPT embellish it into a beautifully written, totally AI-centric sort of thing. And I've done similar things with recaps. I have been well-versed in this sort of generative AI for a little while now, so I do give it absolutely as much information and detail as possible, because when I say the players were on their spelljamming ship and then this happened and they were fighting a Tarask and they escaped, because I didn't really specify that it was an magical air ship, it does sort of hallucinate and go, and they sailed off into the seas as the waves crashed against the thing and the mighty Tarask sea beast came out, and it's like, okay, that's my bad. So it's only as good as what you give it. So I've been doing that, and it is also a bit of a challenge to go, right, how much embellishment, how much information can I put in here, and then just have ChatGPT put it in a really cheesy narrative sort of a format. Which is fun.
And I mean, I think like we've talked a lot about AI on here. And again, there is lots of debate about ethical use of AI. And I think we've been really clear we want to use it ethically. But I think it does open up so many options. And, you know, some of the work that I've done editing, film and video and stuff is that now the sort of subtitle assist is good enough in quite a number of programs, is you can actually get a transcript in 10 seconds of a 4-hour video. So that's something that we haven't really talked about, but is another option as well, is getting a transcript through one of these transcription programs. Sometimes they can come up with some interesting things. I remember a documentary I was working on, and I don't know if it was the accent of the person or like they did switch between two languages, but there was some interesting transcription choices. results.
Transcription translations, yeah.
Yeah, there was an interesting thing, and there was a bed in an elevator in a very improbable situation. Yeah, I think they were driving or moving. It was, yeah, which clearly, well, I'm pretty certain that's not what the interviewee was talking about. But that is an option as
Unlikely.
well.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. Like, I
unlike
mean,
it. This was
if you
real
have
life. This wasn't a game.
yeah, if you have recorded and like we have, we're live streaming, we're putting it out on Twitch, and eventually things are going up on YouTube, and YouTube does do automatic transcriptions.
It does.
With things like this, you could actually just, I mean, honestly, I'm thinking of the most efficient way to take notes right now, which is train an AI agent to do this, upload your recorded sessions. You could do it privately, chuck it on YouTube, or just pump it into these things that
you can
are
just put it
so
through.
fast now. Yeah, these tools are so fast now. And in news this week, Spotify are going to start automatically transcribing podcasts, translating them, and then AI generatively putting them in a new language so that you could upload one podcast and have it in a multitude of languages. Mr. Beast has many channels in different languages, and he has worked very closely with voiceover artists in these different languages, so that it is so native and so true to the experience he's putting out in his videos. And he was asked, "Are you just going to use AI for this now?" And he said, "Absolutely not." Because
which is
the
fair.
people who have been with him this long have invested so much time into learning mannerisms, speech patterns, how they say certain things. And of course, they ask funny questions like, why do you say Lamborghini so much? But I mean, that's the thing, is it's out there and people are doing it. And I mean, if Mr. Beast isn't jumping the gun and just going, oh, there's a shortcut, he values all the people who work with him. And that's what we need to focus on for sure.
And I think that's a key thing, and probably something we can talk about on another stream, because we are starting to head towards the end of our time. But again, it comes back to the ethical use of the tools that you have available. I mean, transcription services have been around for a long time, and then you now have programs that do it automatically. Premiere Pro has a transcription. It's not a plugin; it's actually part of the program, which is excellent. Avid, same thing. It's not as good as Premiere, but it's there. And it can do these things, but it's that finding that line of where do you have the human in there?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that something that you can't capture with AI is the spirit and the soul. But for note-taking, I think it could be really interesting.
Facts. Yeah, for the hard facts and the information about what did happen in a session, that's going to be true and undeniable as long as it does it accurately. But again, you're putting
actually, it'd be hilarious if it didn't do it actively. Oh my God, it didn't do it accurately. Can you imagine? Oh, that could be fun.
Yeah, it'd be like someone just sitting down and being like, this totally happened last session. See, we don't need AI hallucinations. I'm going to do it for you. We've come full
amazing.
circle. But yeah, absolutely. I would say that that's exactly it. Is like you were actually saying, Thea, is generally the feeling or the intention, or you had an idea of where something was going or what an NPC was doing, and damned the name. Damn the name. The name was the fact. The idea and the intention and the character and what you were trying to do through that character. If you were being this,
you can buy my things. Yes, of course. I'm not dodgy in any way. What's that? Mango? Yes, of course. This sounds perfect.
Who cares what that guy's name is? You're invested. Invested. And it's like, hang on, he knows about the code. Oh, this is the guy we interact with. He could be absolutely billions of different
It's picking
names.
up that.
Yeah.
It is getting on to what are the important things to remember. And I know we're running out of time, but an interesting thing that I saw recently with an interview with Brennan Lee Mulligan, because everybody knows how much I admire that human being, was talking about how do you remember accents? And I think that is a key thing, the voices. It's not going to help you. He was like, I just tend to remember. Sometimes he'll take a note, but he says he just tends to remember. So going back to the start of our discussion tonight, when I was saying that my brain kind of glomps onto stories, and if I can just get a couple of little cues, I can run down that storyline again. He seems to be that way with accents, whereas me, I'm lucky if in the space of the same sentence the accent stays the same, especially if I'm going for like a Scandi accent. because it generally ends up turning into something like an Irish accent. And that's not correct. So that is something that I think is important, is picking out the bits that you need to write down.
Absolutely. And that's something you'll learn
that are
over
not going to
time,
work for
just
you.
like just like methods that we touched on in the beginning. Because even though I do, again, like I am pretty good at keeping a lot of stuff in my head in terms of like the overall narrative and the overall direction and the feeling of a particular session. I like to bring in certain scenes that are enacting a certain feeling. And sure, that can be conveyed. But if there is a recurring NPC, I have to take a note of what their accent is because they'll come back and I know that will evolve over many sessions. Who it was when they met them may not be exactly who they are down the line. Sometimes I completely forget. I know what the accent is and I can't quite bring it back up. And I guess that's a huge problem for someone like me who is quite good at accents, and I can do very specific, interesting things. And I want that to be my paint on the canvas of the conversation, because it gives so much character to that person, to that NPC. And to miss the mark on that, I feel I'm not necessarily doing that NPC justice. I feel like maybe their intention, I'm not the creepy little weird guy with this strange accent. Perhaps I'm supposed to be more of a floaty sort of soft accent. And if it's in the ballpark, great. But also for everyone, just a tip, do not get caught up in being accurate, doing a specific accent, because your fantasy, amazing, weird version of whatever that is, we're not trying to insult people. We're not mocking anyone. It's just our best attempt. And I'll be damned if anyone's going to tell me that that's not the most perfect thing for your world and your universe and your execution of this particular session. It's whatever you want it to be. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and I think, obviously it's being sensitive to things that are derogatory and have been used in that way. But it's also, when you're just doing an accent, it's just a regional thing, like a northerner or something like that. It's just trying to remember those details. But it's about doing what works for you. And I think that's something that you do develop over time. And the other thing is, it doesn't matter if you don't get it right. I am a terrible note taker. I am terrible at getting back to my players, but my players keep coming back to play, because it's not about accurately remembering the name of the NPC who maybe they've got a relationship with. Incidentally, that happened accidentally. I didn't think I was putting across that there was some kind of relationship, but then one of my players came back and said, I think it's my girlfriend. And I was like, okay. I hadn't seen that evolving, but sure, it was okay, because that NPC went missing, and so we had a quest to figure out what was going on. Not a princess in the castle. It was a whole different story, but that was an NPC I forgot the name of because I didn't write it down. But I think that's the key.
Like, we're not perfect. Like, it's about communication and keeping that channel open, having check-ins with people, and just being like, hey, again, like it's as simple as just, even if you don't remember to do stars and wishes at the end of a session, just shoot them a random message when you feel like it and be like, hey guys, like, what are you guys enjoying? What do you want to see more of? There's nothing wrong with that. And if that's the only note, again, like a note, we should have defined at the start, not right at the end, I guess, is just a point of information. It's a reference point. It's both the catalyst for new ideas. It's both a concrete securing of something that did happen. Like I said at the beginning, I've started with a big A4 gridded pad. I still have those from like 6-7 years ago, and the nostalgia of going through them and just being like, oh my, that NPC. And it does, like, there's just one line of a name of cool, and I'm like, damn, that was
and
really
it brings
cool.
it back.
Yeah, and I can't wait, now that I've got this amazing comprehensive session log in Notion and I've all that effort, I'm going to share my entire campaign history with my players when we're done. And I just want to sit there and watch them go, and like sort of explain what my intentions were, what did happen. And it would be like kind of the cast of a movie getting interviewed in a way, like, oh man, like, the reason that came about is because Jimmy's leg was bad that day. So that's why he had to sit in a chair and look all menacing. Stuff like that. All of these beautiful, interesting things. And I feel like that's something that campaigns, I don't know, there's so many games happening out there, but that's my intention. So That'd be
That's
really
a
cool.
wonderful way to wrap up a campaign. It's that BTS kind of stuff. It's asking the
Absolutely.
questions. Yeah, I love
It's
that
the
idea.
director's
Now I definitely
commentary.
want to take it.
Like,
It
I want to do it
is.
with
Now I'm
them.
definitely. Yeah,
They're very cool.
I'm going to do that now. Now I am inspired to take better notes because I think that is fantastic. We are hitting the end of our time, but do have a wonderful wrap-up question from the most estimable Doria. The best note that you've taken from a player's actions backstory that we've moved on?
Wow.
I have one.
Okay, because I don't. I was scrambling.
Yeah. So mine goes back again to the Hatch store, which was a throwaway. Oh, they asked what else was in the street. Well, of course, there's a souvenir store and it sells hats. Was not actually the player hatter who asked about the hats. It was a different player, but hey, It's there now. And just that NPC behind the counter being a tabaxi and having that interaction. And then they had a sister and a family, and it's turned into a bit of an ongoing thing. So there's been that. It's often NPCs, I think, that I note down. And then there's Margaret Batcher. She's my favorite thing that I've noted down. Because she was, again, an NPC, wasn't even going to be an NPC, was a creature that the players decide to talk to.
Margaret Badger.
And immediately was scrambling for a name. It was a mephit, so bat-like wings.
Oh, cool.
Awesome. Wasn't actually a mephit, but yeah, bat-like wings. So, and I was like, oh, and they said, what's their name? And I was like, Margaret. And they went, Margaret Batcher? I went, yes. Margaret Batcher has become a returning NPC with a whole backstory. And, did actually turn into a hostage in a cage at a Christmas game that we played, where the Christmas tree, it was a homebrew creature Christmas tree, but it was able to fire exploding Christmas balls with an area of effect that knocked, I think I had about 3 or 4 players unconscious on that one. And then Margaret Batcher came back and was found in a cage, and it's tied into an ongoing story arc about something is wrong. Someone is doing something to the inhabitants of this town. And yeah, so that's probably the one. And yeah, but Margaret Batcher, it was the players that came up with the name for her.
Yeah, awesome. I mean,
one
I feel
of my
that's
players
almost a trope now, is the throwaway random MC, the old Boblin and the Goblin.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Boblin
you
the
just
Goblin,
come up
who
with
everybody
something, and
loves.
for some reason that sticks so hard. But that's the point, is it is this art of improv. Like, you have an idea, but it's not fully fleshed out. You improvise something, they get attached to it. That becomes the recurring thing. It's everything we've talked about tonight. So absolutely.
And I think that's if I was going to kind of wrap up with the point, I think that's the key thing when we talk about taking notes, taking points, taking histories. It's picking out the bits that are going to make it better for everybody. And that's what you want to keep track of. And if you're not naturally going to keep track of that, because like me, you just immediately data dump names, that's the sort of stuff that you want to be writing down. And it can be just like a scrappy bit of paper with some very bad. I've realized I've revealed my handwriting to the world, and it is poor. But that's probably that'd be my reflection. I mean, I am perfect apart from that. Gosh, please. But that's probably my point to reflect on of this. Have you got any kind of, I guess, reflections or wrapping up points?
Yeah. I mean, we've got an ad about to start, but let's not worry about that. I definitely, like, I really cannot think of a distinct moment where someone was like, hey, I've got this thing in my backstory, and I've jumped off that and done a thing. I had full intentions to do that in one of my client games when we did Eberron. One of the players was a sea elf, a very wonderfully unique race of elves. And I had plans for the adventure to go and see a pirate king and some isles. So there was a lot of intention, because they were looking for their missing parents and stuff. So that never surmounted. The campaign ended before we crunched into the pirate kings and all of their politics and stuff. But it's come and gone. I can't think of anything too concrete. But again, just like you said, they're like, you have to do it. You know, try a method, see what works. don't go putting down heaps of information if that's not going to serve you. Try and figure out where the gaps are in either your memory or your note taking. Employ some players to also give you feedback. It doesn't have to just come from them. Ask them, prompt them, come up with a session rap idea like stars and wishes,
stars and prompts.
And don't be like beating up on yourself if you don't necessarily bring anything from a previous session to the new session. Have a way to just record some stuff that you kind of think was cool or important, what the players thought was important. Keep that channel open, and that's going to be the easiest way to kind of go, hey, last thing I will say is a shout out to Ben, who's been on the show. When we were doing, when we were doing a different Eberron campaign, he was doing, it was our live stream game with Descent into Avernus. And he did much like the recap that was happening in Last Airbender, Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra and things, is they had an NPC, the Cabbage Man, do a sort of radio, 50-style radio kind of, previously on Descent into Avernus, the players were doing this, and then they did that, and then this happened, and it was important. What will they do? Where will they go? Find out now as we continue. That was utterly incredible. Not only was it massive entertainment factor, everyone loved it, everyone was looking forward to it, the player really enjoyed doing it, and it was invaluable to actually be like, holy crap, we have just excitedly launched into a session. So that needed to get an honorable mention before we depart, because shout out to Ben.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's sick. We've also got from Stuvie in the chat, says that they take sort of a captain's log, which I really like.
Yes, he does.
I think that's a very good idea.
And draws an amazing picture to go with each and every session.
Even better. Very cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully Stuvie's hearing this, because we did go to a quick ad break, but that is okay. Yep. You also use art to bring it to life. Amazing.
Yeah, you do.
I wish I could draw.
New familiar.
Oh.
A pseudo dragon. Gold pseudo dragon.
Oh, adorable. Does it sleep with its little paws over its face? So I tend to bring my pets into a lot. However, we are running out of time. Jared, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you this week.
So much fun.
What?
Yeah.
Do you know what's happening next week?
I really hope, but I'm not guaranteeing, that we're going to have an incredible conversation between Ian and a good friend of mine, James, because they are both theatre nerds. And oh boy, do I want to see some people who have got some kind of concrete training or, sort of foundation in acting and theatre, and bringing that to the table, because having now played with Ian, I know that he really brings some fantastic stuff, and having James been a player of mine who has legitimately scared me by the way he went into he played this amazing tiefling bard who was like the mother of the group and constantly trying to rein people in. It was all on the level, and everybody was like, okay, when he starts yelling, it's only because he's really getting into it. It's not personal. But when somebody really throws commitment like that in, I just want to see what's going on up there. And I would love to talk about theatre at the table. Yeah.
Definitely. It'll be very exciting, but it may not, because, not only is history written by the writers and the note takers, the future is unknown.
It is undetermined and unfixed, but we will try and guide our ships into the night.
Yes. See, we'll sail off into the sunset or ride off into the sunrise, depending on what kind of gaming trope you would like to follow here. However, we are at the end of our time. We have just posted our socials in the chat. Please do join us. We have Discord, we have Facebook. YouTube is coming along. It has season 1, and now towards the end of season 3, we might get season 2 up there. Yeah. It could happen. But we want to thank everybody in chat. Thank you.
On Netflix or something.
Yeah. Like there was a strike. Like we didn't want to break the writers' strike and the actors' strike.
It's all boring.
I'm not crossing a picket line. That is not who we are here. But we want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you, Jared. It's always been a pleasure to see. Thank you, Ian. We know you're out there. We did it. It didn't explode without you.
Secret fun fact, Doria.
I know.
I know. We love you, Ian.
You
Thanks for
can't
tuning
just
in. We
dox
miss you.
people like that. You can't just dox people
I know.
like that.
It's not. I know. It's not like he's put himself out on the internet with us before.
I know,
That's
right?
just crazy.
But we are going to wrap up this evening. We're going to raid an excellent D&D player. She's not playing D&D right now. She's actually playing Starfield, but she's a wonderful Kiwi human being. And I think we should just go and say hello. But thank you, everyone, for listening. We will be back next week. We love you all very much. Any final words, Jared?
No, love you all.
Sounds a little ominous.
Thank you so much. This was really insightful, and this is something this has been on the back burner as like a filler episode for us for ages, but it's also been secretly something I've really wanted to talk about because I wanted to improve, and now I feel like I really have something to take away. So hopefully everyone listening
I do too. Yeah, I do as well. All right. Super. We will see you next time. Mwah. Love you all.
Night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Totally have the outro ready. Bye.